The person that you're seeing on screen right now is Jamaal Bowman, the House Representative for the 16th District of the state of New York, from 2021 to the 3rd of January 2025. While in office, his only contributions were to vote along squad lines and introduce the COUP Act, establishing a committee on unjust policing, and to be censured for an attempted disruption of Congress involving the fire alarm in the Cannon office building. He's reputed for his pro-criminal, anti-policing, and anti-Israel stances, and for being a member of the socialist cheer clique colloquially known as the Squad. On December 10th of 2024, Representative Bowman published a short screed on X, apparently in response to the not guilty verdict of the Neely Penny case. As is normally the case with this particular lawmaker, he demonstrated not only his hatred of an entire ethnicity of people, but his astounding deliberate ignorance of both public happenings of the last few decades and of current American race relations in general, as well as confirming his pro-crime bias. As both a school principal and an elected member of the House of Representatives, at least he was until the 3rd of this month, you might think it in his wheelhouse to keep current and balanced with such subjects, but that would be willfully ignorant, as it was on my part, of his status as a race-grifting activist and a member of the American Democrat Party, and of the Squad. Naturally, this public statement raised a few questions with me. First, why address such a statement to an entire race of people? And before anyone starts making their own observations on this statement, I'm not speaking for anyone but myself. But he did address it to white people, and that includes me. I get the impression from reading it that it was written in an emotional moment, but it's assuredly matter of fact, as if stating something obvious and brooking no criticism. He begins, "Dear white people, I don't know why I feel the need to keep talking to you. I don't know why part of me still has hope for you and for us. Some of you are too far gone, but maybe enough of you aren't, and will join us in fighting to end white supremacy." Well, congratulations, Representative. It seems both the legal system in this country and the country's activist population agree with you. Or at the very least, they seem to treat all of us with the same level of disregard. Further, it's very interesting that he opens up his statement that way. Don't know why I feel the need to keep talking to you? Then why bother? Especially in such a public forum. He's making this statement for a reason. Obviously, this is just included in order to dress down the stated recipients of his outreach. And why include an oppositional binary like you and us? How does he think a reader is going to interpret that? One might as well be honest, expressly state that white folks are his enemy, and be done with it. Yeah, very Fanon-esque. So after thinking it over for all of 10 minutes, I realized that good sir's claim of not knowing why he feels the need to talk to white people is nothing but trolling in print, especially voiced in a deliberately maliciously provocative manner. It occurred to me that I had seen this sort of statement before. It's right out of the playbook, actually, that book being Rules for Radicals, or Beautiful Trouble if you want the update. What I mean by that is, your reaction, and mine, to the post is the reason for the post. Then he points to the inevitable disagreements and mean comments as proof of his oppressed status speaking to power. Unfortunately, even as a kindergarten example of the technique, this was both misread and miscalculated. See, Jamali Lally here was a sitting congressman. This sort of tactic is designed as what they call political jujitsu. It's meant to be used in a situation where you're the underdog fighting the power, not as a member of the governing elite addressing what his fellow socialists like to call the proletariat. Also, he seems to have forgotten that if he's complaining about how our society, government, and law enforcement bodies treat black people so monstrously, He's had since 2021 as a national lawmaker to change the system to his liking. Has he done so? Well, aside from introducing a way to make policing harder and more expensive for everyone in D.C. and doing the bare minimum of casting the votes that the party wanted him to cast, no, he hasn't done much at all. He continues, "I just want to call out the hypocrisy and evil of it all, and continue to hope. I won't rely completely on you because I know that what's most important is to work with my community and other like-minded allies in the fight for justice. But I guess I'll just offer this." It's funny he should mention evil and hypocrisy. You'll see what I mean in a sec. See, the rep goes on here to list a number of incidents in which black people were killed or assaulted, implying that in each instance the death was both unjust and without consequence for the killer. He then goes on to assert that no such events happened to white people. Really? Never. But no, he actually asserts that it never happens. Then he says it twice. He goes on to assert explicitly that there is never accountability for those doing the killing. Again, never? Does he not watch the news, or does he only get his news from the bubble of fellow activists? Wouldn't that be irresponsible for an elected office holder and educator? I mean, you be the judge of that. But anyway, his statement here is framed around two ideas: that these listed incidents are unjust and that they are motivated by white supremacy in both committing the violence and in the public and governing reaction to it. The implication here is that these people are dead because white people in the US want them dead exclusively for being black, not because of the crimes they committed or their actions in the moment, especially resisting arrest or the danger to the public that they may have posed. It's implied that whatever laws were broken by these individuals were merely tools to rationalize further oppression and hunting of black people and to justify the murder of these particular individuals. Anyway, his first example is, "I am 48 years old and I have seen countless incidents of brutal police violence and killings in my lifetime. The first black man I saw violently attacked on camera was Rodney King. Those officers were acquitted." Well, no. Actually, only 2 of them were finally acquitted. As cited in the community notes on X, 2 of these 4 officers were tried and convicted federally. Powell was acquitted for excessive force and false report under California law, but he got a hung jury for the assault. California then dropped that charge when the federal case filed. He was convicted on federal charges, and he went to prison. Officer Kuhn was acquitted in California, the same as the other, then convicted on federal charges. He too went to prison. All 4 officers were brought up on charges. All of them were relieved of their jobs. In 2020, Sean Schellinger was killed by a young black man named Michael White, who actually was acquitted. Ironically, this happened in Rittenhouse Square. That was in Philadelphia, not in Kenosha. He continues, "Next was Eric Garner's murder and his cries of 'I can't breathe.' All he wanted to do was try to sell a few cigarettes to survive in an economy that had failed him. And he was jumped and killed by police. I'm curious how a national economy in decline is responsible for an individual illegally selling items that you have to have a license for without said license. And yes, you can be arrested for that. Oddly enough, if you resist arrest, the officers will restrain you. Weird how that works, isn't it?" Lauren Ahrens, Michael Kroll, Michael Smith, Brent Thomas, and Patricio Zamarripa, all officers in the Dallas PD, were killed by Micah Xavier Johnson, who went on a shooting spree because all he wanted was to kill white people. He targeted them because of the uniform and the color of their skin. He also injured 9 other officers and 2 civilians. Bowman continues, "The next video burned into my memory is the murder of Philando Castile. shot and bled to death by police on live stream, with his child in the back seat and his girlfriend next to him. How will that child heal from the trauma that will live in his body for the rest of his life? In Utah, a publicly unnamed man was shot to death by 5 officers because they thought he was armed and attacking. He was also white. Never happens, though, right? Yeah, he was Sov-Sit, and it was very annoying, but was that justification to kill him? Lamu Sire manually suffocated her own 2-year-old son to death, but she'll never go to trial. That child certainly will never heal. Where's the justice there? He continues, I didn't see videos of Trayvon Martin or Breonna Taylor, but their murders and the trauma from their murders still lives in my bones. I felt it then and I feel it now. And it's compounded with every new video I see. Trayvon Martin was shot because he was on top of Zimmerman, pummeling him, attacking him. It was self-defense. Breonna Taylor was unfortunately killed because she was standing next to a man who had shot first, opening fire on cops, wounding a police officer. And those officers were fired, arrested, tried, and punished, including 3 who weren't even present at the shooting. Bianca Ellis famously stole 2 kitchen knives and deliberately looked for someone to attack before settling on a mother and a son, Margot and Julian Woods. Both of them were hospitalized, but Julian, a 3-year-old boy, died. This all happened when Ellis was undergoing competency hearings for a previous crime. Mac Brown Mbanwe stabbed his classmate Darren Loving to death and was also found incompetent to stand trial. I'm curious where the justice is in that. Bowman goes on. The world saw George Floyd murdered. His murderer knelt on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I cried, and I couldn't stop crying. I saw 5 black Memphis police officers beating a black man to death on camera. White supremacy is not skin color. It is a state of mind. And as for George Floyd, the same thing happened to a man named Tony Timpa, and the cops involved are on video laughing at him as he's dying. It's okay, folks, we're coming to the back end now. Jordan Neely is the latest. He was sick. He was not a threat. He was subdued. Still not a threat. Daniel Penny choked him for 6 minutes and killed him. We all watched it on camera, and he was still acquitted. Natalie Shotter was orally raped to death by Mohammed Idau. She wasn't a threat to anyone either. And unlike Neely, she hadn't been harassing people around her with actual death threats. So now he finally gets to the point. I've left out probably another 100 instances of this trauma in my life. For comparison, I ask white people, how many times have you seen a white man killed in cold blood on camera on your news feed? How many times have you even heard about this? If you really do have more examples that prove that point, why would you leave them out? And he says hundreds here. I mean, color me doubtful. I've personally seen stories of white people being murdered for their skin color here in the US, as well as black people targeting Asian folks for violence and then seeing the press blame it on white privilege. The same happens against Jews. This is not an exclusive one-way atrocity as he seems to think it is. But he goes on. The answer is never. You never have. And whenever you feel discomfort from your whiteness, black people are harmed or killed, and there is never accountability or justice. This is the evil of white supremacy. It spans across geography and political parties, and it sickens us all. Delawante Harday killed Officer Jameson Ritter, but he was found incompetent to stand trial. He will face no justice. And if you've watched this far, you've probably noticed that this is not the only example I'm going to be providing. I've been giving instances of people killed or assaulted with murderous intent. Families devastated, communities wounded and living in fear, and some of these cases are hate crimes deliberately committed against the victims because of their skin color or their ethnicity, and done so in the criminal's own words. Jada Woods Johnson was killed in the Alderwood Mall shooting. This was in Linwood, Washington. Then there was Emmanuel Aranda, who threw a 5-year-old, publicly unnamed boy from a third-floor balcony in the Mall of America. He said he was looking for someone to kill. Literally hunting people. But that never happens. Jordan Williams, a black man, stabbed a white man to death and had his charges dropped by claiming self-defense in 2023. Kamel Hawkins shoved a white man onto the subway tracks trying to kill him. This was all in the news feed. And as for never having to deal with accountability, he's wrong about that too. Wrong or just lying. But he continues his post. I wish I didn't have to live with all this trauma deep in my bones. I wish I could just be free to be me. I marvel at the beauty and the greatness of my people in spite of white supremacy. It's extraordinary. That is what I will continue to lean on. Aside from the victim cinema that his bones are playing at here, why oh why can't I just be me? It's not as if I'm publicly pleading trauma over someone else's tragedy. He's stating that his people are beautiful and great, and whites are, as stated earlier, evil? And here I thought he was crying about white supremacy. Sounds like that's not the only kind of racism at play here. Welcome to the crap side of humanity. Sometimes these evil people do, in fact, rise to positions of fame, social prominence, and yes, political power, as illustrated by Bowman himself. I've never met him, don't really know anything about him, but his negative reputation has been earned through public action and public statement. So he finishes, R.I.P. Jordan Neely. The justice system failed you. Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny are free. You're gone. We must still fight. The system didn't fail Neely. His sanity abandoned him. He was threatening violence on others, telling them he wasn't afraid to die to do so. Daniel Penny is free because self-defense is still a right. Well, outside Minnesota it is anyway. Kyle Rittenhouse is free because of that same right, in the face of a violent mob that was chasing and attacking him, no less. But if the good representative is implying that one should submit themselves to the whim of others based on political view or numbers, or especially skin color, then he has no place being a politician in this country at all, or an educator. And if he really wants to get justice, as he says he does, he might want to head back to school and educate himself on what that word really means.